I made a mistake. My husband found out that the child wasn't his and took brutal revenge, freaking out. It seems the kid isn't his. He threw all my stuff out of our house. I need help. I'm coming on here now because I desperately need advice. I just got kicked out of the house by my husband after he found out that the child wasn't his. It was one I made a mistake in time and didn't know how to fix. You probably want to know what happened, so I'll give you some background. My name is Felicia, I'm 30, and I've been married to Robin, who is 32. I've been married to Robin for 5 years now. We met on a dating site and hit it off right away. We dated for a few years before getting married. It was a whirlwind romance, but I never felt like it went too fast. Robin is the exact opposite of me. He's handsome, charming, and ambitious. He has a magnetic personality that draws people towards him effortlessly. He's a successful architect, while I'm a complex character. I'm intelligent and warm, but I have insecurities and vulnerabilities. I'm not as popular or as charming as Robin. I was a bit cautious about trying online dating, not knowing what to expect, but Robin's profile caught my eye right away. He seemed really friendly and confident. Our chats were easy, and I felt like we clicked, even though we'd only just met. When we finally met in person, I was drawn to Robin's outgoing personality. He made me feel special, like I was the center of his attention. But deep down, I could tell he had his own insecurities too, which made me feel closer to him. Our relationship just felt right from the start. We enjoyed simple things together, like stealing glances across the room, or having heart-to-hearts. To be continued. My heart speaks, but I sometimes worried that I wasn't as outgoing or impressive as Robin. Despite my doubts, I knew we had something special. I admired Robin's drive and ambition, and he appreciated me for who I was, flaws and all. Together, we faced life's challenges with love and support from the moment we started dating. It was clear that Robin was on a successful path as an architect. He brought on. While I was building my career as an artist, Robin was bringing in a steady income. He didn't mind covering the bills. He was just glad to see me doing what I loved. However, his demanding job meant he was often away, leaving me feeling isolated and alone. Despite his best efforts, the loneliness crept in, casting a shadow over our otherwise happy relationship. To be honest, I was feeling pretty lonely. My heart was heavy when I spoke to Robin about feeling lonely. He was doing his best to juggle work and our relationship, but with him being the main breadwinner, his job kept him away a lot. One night, when Robin was out again for the weekend, and I was feeling really low, I ended up at a bar alone. That's where I met John. We hit it off right away, and with a few drinks in me, things got out of hand, and we had sex the next morning. I felt really regretful and promised myself I'd never do that again. I swore I'd never drink like that again. The idea of telling Robin made me nervous. I was scared of hurting him or messing up what we had, so I kept it to myself, hoping I could bury the guilt and move on. I loved Robin too much to lose him. I knew I would lose him if I ever told him. The fear of losing Robin was overwhelming, and the thought of confessing filled me with dread. I loved him deeply and couldn't bear the idea of him walking away because I messed up, so I decided to keep my indiscretion a secret. I locked it away deep within me. When John expressed interest in seeing each other again, I shut him down immediately. I made it clear that what happened was a mistake, fueled by alcohol and loneliness, and that I was committed to my relationship with Robin. I hoped that by distancing myself from John, I could bury the memory of that night and move forward. I was back to normal for a while, but then I found out I was pregnant. I was really shocked. I'd been so worried about Robin finding out about my affair that I'd forgotten to take my birth control pill. I knew the baby was probably John's, but I couldn't tell Robin. I loved him too much to risk losing him, so I made the decision to lie. It was a tough decision to lie and tell him the baby was his. I was surprised that Robin was so happy when I told him the news. He was so happy, in fact, that he proposed to me just a few months later. Despite the whirlwind of happiness surrounding our wedding, I felt guilty. I knew I was deceiving Robin, but I convinced myself it was for the greater good. If I had told him the truth, it would have ruined our happiness and torn our family apart. Our honeymoon was amazing, and Robin went all out to make it special, despite the challenges of pregnancy, including morning sickness and hormonal swings. He was my rock, supporting me every step of the way. His excitement for the baby only made me feel more guilty, knowing deep down that the child wasn't his. But the reality of our situation weighed heavily on me. Robin was not only the love of my life, but also my rock. He provided for us financially, and without him, I was worried about money, and the thought of losing him was unbearable. So I tried to ignore my guilt and focus on preserving our marriage. Each time John tried to contact me, I shut him down, refusing to entertain the possibility of him being the father. I reassured myself that the lie was necessary to protect my marriage and our future as a family. Before I knew it, the baby came. He was so cute, and I'm going to call him Felix, for the sake of privacy. The first few months with Felix were a whirlwind of joy and exhaustion. He was a healthy, adorable little guy, and everyone couldn't get enough of him. Robin was over the moon about having a son, and he stepped up big time to help me out. He even reduced his work hours to be around more, which made all the difference. With Robin's help and support from our families, we got through those tough early days. As Felix started growing up a bit, I started feeling a bit restless. Don't get me wrong, being a stay. At the time, I was really happy at home with Felix, but I started to feel a bit restless. The days were starting to blend together, and I missed the challenge of work. So I decided to go back to work once Felix was a bit older. It wasn't an easy choice, but I knew it was the right one for me. Plus, a break from diapers and baby talk sounded pretty good. My partner was great, but I needed something more. The days at home were starting to blend together, and I missed the challenge of work. So I decided I'd go back to work once I felt a bit older. Maybe around 2 or 3 years old. It wasn't an easy choice, but I knew it was the right one for me. Plus, a break from nappies and baby talk sounded pretty good. Things were great for a while. However, as Felix grew, it became clear to everyone that he didn't quite resemble Robin. The whispers started when he was around a year old, and by the time he was a little over a year, it was hard to ignore. I couldn't shake off the worry that had plagued me during pregnancy. I'd prayed that Felix wouldn't take after John in looks. I knew there was no chance he'd look like Robin, but I hoped he'd take after me enough to throw people off the scent. Unfortunately, Felix ended up resembling me. A lot, but with a strong resemblance to John too. It didn't take long for everyone to notice the stark contrast between Felix and Robin. Felix's red hair stuck out like a sore thumb against the backdrop of Robin's blonde locks, and my own black hair. It was a real head-scratcher for everyone, including me. I didn't really understand how genetics worked, but I was hoping Felix would end up with hair like mine or Robin's. But fate had other plans. Felix ended up with red hair just like John. As Felix got older, his red hair became the talk of the town, sparking questions about where he got it from. I was relieved when Robin didn't seem bothered by Felix's red hair. He reassured me that he knew Felix was his son, no matter the color of his hair. Robin even mentioned that his grandma had red hair, suggesting that might be where Felix got it from. His understanding and acceptance eased my mind. It was a huge relief to know that Robin was always there for me when people questioned Felix's appearance. There was one particular instance when a cousin of Robin's who was visiting couldn't help but comment on Felix's red hair. Instead of letting it become an awkward moment, Robin smoothly stepped in and explained that Felix probably inherited his red hair from their grandma. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I was really relieved that Robin defended me and handled the situation so well. What impressed me most was how the cousin responded. Instead of focusing on the differences, they praised genetics for its mysterious ways. They highlighted how it can uncover hidden traits and bring surprises into the world. It was a reminder that sometimes what makes us unique is also what makes life beautiful. As Felix turned to me, I found myself considering a return to work. I didn't want anything too stressful, but rather something flexible that would still allow me plenty of time with Felix. Remote work wasn't appealing since I was eager to get out of the house. I started browsing job listings, but I wasn't in any rush. Robin, on the other hand, wasn't thrilled about the idea of me going back to work with his income now higher than before. He didn't see the need for me to work outside the home. I sat down with Robin to discuss it. I laid it all out for him, explaining why I felt the need to go back to work. Unlike him, I didn't have a wide circle of friends. Robin was the social butterfly, effortlessly charming everyone he met. I was more of a lone wolf with few connections outside our family. With Felix to care for, my world had become even smaller, especially on days when Robin was away for work. The loneliness weighed heavy on me, and I missed him dearly. I felt trapped in the four walls of our home, started to feel a bit claustrophobic, and I was craving a change of scenery. There was no one to invite me on a girls' night out or to invite me outside for drinks. It was just me. I enjoyed the solitude, but it was also a bit stifling. Going back to work wasn't just about earning money. It was about reclaiming a sense of independence and purpose outside the confines of our home. It was a way for me to break free from I was feeling isolated and monotonous, and like I wasn't contributing anything meaningful to the world outside our family. I felt like I was just a mom. Robin agreed with me and even apologized for the loneliness I'd been feeling. He said he felt sorry and assured me he was doing his best. I told him there was no need to apologize because, to be honest, I felt sorry too. Robin was putting in long hours at work to provide for us. He was doing a great job of it, especially after Felix was born. We moved to a bigger house with a home theater and a swimming pool. However, John just wouldn't leave me alone. It was really frustrating. He'd been trying to meet up, so I decided to entertain him this time. Instead of blocking him, I responded to his text and we agreed to meet outside of town. When we met, I made it clear to John that there was no way Felix could be his child. I explained that Felix was Robin's, and that I had taken the morning after pill after that night. John tried to defend himself by pointing out Felix's red hair, claiming it was like his. I warned him that I would involve the police if he continued to harass us. I asked if he had been stalking us, but he denied it, saying he had only seen us at places like Nubstrawer. I told him that red hair ran in Robin's family, which made it clear that Felix wasn't his child. I asked him to stop worrying me, and explain the situation thoroughly so he wouldn't bother me again. I even mentioned that I had done a DNA test, which finally convinced him to drop it. John apologized for bothering me, and said he didn't mean to come off as creepy. He was just curious, and if Felix had been his child, he would have wanted a place in their life. I told him again that Felix wasn't his child, and that he shouldn't worry me any further. Then I left with Felix at his grandparents', and Robin heading to work. It was just me at home. I understood Robin's stress, especially dealing with demanding clients at work. He suggested I take a break and go out the next day, while he stayed home with Felix. I was thrilled. It was rare for Robin to have a free day, and even rarer for him to insist I take time for myself. I was really excited because it was a rare free day, and even rarer for him to insist I take time for myself, since I didn't have many friends to hang out with most days. It was just me and Felix at home, so the prospect of having a day to myself was really appealing. The next day, Robin handed me his credit card, and encouraged me to treat myself to some pampering. He planned to take Felix to the park for some quality father-son time, so I seized the opportunity, and indulged in a day of self-care. I treated myself to a spa session, got my nails done, and even refreshed my hair. It felt great to have some time just for me, and I enjoyed every moment of it. When I got home, Felix was in high spirits, and he excitedly told me all about his day with Robin at the park. Robin told me how much he'd enjoyed the pizza. We spent some time watching TV together, had dinner, and then settled down for bed. However, over the next few days, I noticed Robin's irritability creeping in. I put it down to his usual work stress at first, but as Robin's irritability worsened, he started directing it towards me, which was really unsettling. His behavior got worse and worse, until he wouldn't interact with Felix much at all. Communication became really strained with Robin shutting down and refusing to engage in conversation, despite my attempts to address the issue. Robin insisted that everything was fine, and attributed his behavior to work-related stress. I tried to address the issue, but Robin kept insisting that everything was fine, and that his behavior was down to work. I was really worried about Robin and his behavior. I decided to ask his parents for help. They were always understanding and supportive. After talking to Robin, we agreed that I would visit them in a few days. Robin was fine with the plan, and even encouraged us to go. He wanted a date to himself the next day. Felix and I got ready and headed to his parents' house. It was a nice visit, with lots of nice conversation and reassurance that Robin's behavior was probably just down to work. Felix enjoyed playing there, and his grandparents gave him lots of love and attention after spending several hours there. I realized it was getting late, and decided to head home to prepare dinner. When I arrived, I was shocked to find not only my belongings on the porch, but also Felix's belongings, which made me realize that something was seriously wrong. I stood there, feeling bewildered and scared, looking at my and Felix's belongings strewn on the porch. Why had Robin thrown them? My heart was racing with confusion and anxiety as I desperately tried calling him, but he refused to answer, resorting to banging on the door. I hoped my neighbors wouldn't call the cops for the noise after what felt like an eternity. Robin cracked the door open just enough to peek out and ask what I wanted. I was taken aback. What did he mean? I just wanted to come inside. I had returned from his parents' place feeling stressed, and Felix was tired and needed to sleep. The situation made no sense. I couldn't understand why Robin was acting this way. I soon found out why. Robin looked me dead in the eye and told me he knew Felix wasn't his child. When he stared me down and said those words, it felt like my whole world collapsed. I wished I could just vanish into thin air. At first, I nervously chuckled, thinking he was pulling my leg, but his expression told me he was dead serious. He dropped the bombshell that he'd done a DNA test proving Felix wasn't Robin's biological child. It felt like a punch to the gut. Robin's calm voice contrasted with the fire burning in his eyes as he accused me of betraying him and trying to pass off another guy's kid as his own. His words hit me like a ton of bricks, leaving me stunned and overwhelmed with guilt. I stood there, unable to find the right words, as Robin made it clear he never wanted to see me again. I watched as he walked back inside, and he closed the door. It felt like a punch to the gut. I went through a whirlwind of emotions right then and there. I could feel the eyes of our nosy neighbors on me, but I didn't want to make a scene or become the talk of the town. I wanted to cry, scream, and beg all at once, but I knew there was no point in begging Robin for forgiveness. He was too stubborn, and I didn't want to subject myself to more humiliation, so I called an Uber to take me and Felix to my parents' house, packing our rubber. I left the house we shared quickly and went to my childhood home. I'm stuck in my room, feeling utterly defeated. I've been crying for a long time. Leaving Robin's place was tough, but now I'm completely falling apart. My parents are angry, but there's not much they can do. They're talking about staging an intervention to convince Robin to give me another chance. It sounds like a long shot, and honestly, I'm not sure it will work. I can't shake this feeling of guilt and dread, knowing I've messed everything up. All I can do now is wait and hope for the best. It's tough right now, because my parents are the only ones in my corner willing to lend a hand. Earlier, I tried reaching out to Robin's parents, hoping they'd offer some support. But that backfired. They picked up the phone, only to give me an earful, making it clear they were on to me. Their anger cut deep, especially since I really cared for them. They'd always been so kind to me. Now I'd gone and betrayed their trust. I feel really guilty. I know I've let them down in a big way. It's a painful realization that's hard to shake off. I also found out that Robin had emptied our joint account before I even reached my parents' place. Our joint account was our lifeline. Robin would deposit money for bills, expenses, and my own needs, since I'm not working much. At the time, I was really struggling to make ends meet. As a stay-at-home mom, it was a major source of financial support for me. But when I checked the account, it was completely drained. I was stranded and had to rely on my parents to cover the cost of the Uber ride. It was a painful reminder of just how much damage had been done to our relationship. I don't think Robin will ever forgive me. But I can only. I'm hoping to get some advice or suggestions on how to approach Robin. Do you think he'll ever forgive me? Thanks for listening. Update. Hi everyone. I know it's been a while since I last posted, and I didn't expect to be back here. But seeing how much attention my last post received, I feel compelled to share another update with you all. A lot has happened in the past month, and I want to fill you in on the details. I'd like to start by sharing the sad news that Robin and I are getting a divorce. As I mentioned earlier, my parents had promised to stage an intervention to help me mend things with Robin. We tried reaching out to him multiple times, but he refused to pick up, even when we called from a private number. So, we decided to take matters into our own hands and headed over to his house, hoping to speak with him face to face when we arrived. When we got to the house, I was relieved to see that Robin was home. Despite the tension between us, he still had a soft spot for my parents, because of how kind they had always been to him. He welcomed us inside, although he did shoot me a disapproving look. He greeted my parents and my brother warmly, and even offered them drinks. I was shocked to hear that Robin wasn't supposed to know JN. He must have noticed my surprise, because he went on to explain that JN had actually approached him before claiming that he and I had sex, and that he thought Felix was his. Robin didn't believe him, knowing I usually stayed home, but JN kept insisting that Felix was his child. As Robin started seeing similarities between JN and Felix, he began to wonder if there was any truth to it. That's when he decided to do a DNA test to prove John wrong. I was speechless. There was no way I could defend myself. My parents decided it was best to leave before we left, seeing that Robin wasn't going to change his mind. Robin made it clear that he'd be sending divorce papers my way soon, and that he wouldn't be paying child support. He even threatened to sue for paternal fraud to avoid it. I broke down crying and pleading, but Robin remained unmoved. Eventually, my parents had to physically pull me away from Robin's house. I realized that I had brought this upon myself. This is everything that's happened. I'm still at my parents' place, and even though Felix senses something's off, he's too young to fully grasp it. I honestly blame JN for everything. I'll never forgive him, and I won't ever have a say in Felix's life, no matter what. Thanks to everyone for their support. I just hope others don't make the same mistake I did. Feeling defeated doesn't even begin to describe how I feel. Describe it. How did I go from a life with luxuries like a home theater and a swimming pool back to my parents' house? Robin had gotten me used to that lifestyle, and now I'm back to square one, getting back into the workforce after a long break. It won't be easy. Thanks for listening. It was nice while it lasted, like my parents said. I brought this on myself financially and ruined me in court because of a stupid kiss on a night out. I think the saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, applies to me, because you really don't know what your enemies are up to. I got betrayed by someone I thought was my friend, and it's had a big impact on me. I'm not okay right now, and I don't have any friends, which is why I want to share this story with everyone. My name is Chloe, and I am 26 years old. My husband, or should I say ex-husband, is Alex, and he is 28 years old. My husband, Alex, is 28 years old. I think I should start this story from the beginning. I come from a poor family. There are 4 of us in the family, and I have one younger sister, Sophia, who is currently 20 years old. There were many difficulties growing up, especially from my younger years when I turned 6. Sophia came into the picture then. The crazy part is that she doesn't belong to my dad. My mom was a street food vendor. I don't know if there's another term for that, but she sold junk like hot dogs in this cart she dragged around on the street. My dad worked as a janitor, so as you can imagine, the money they were getting wasn't a lot. I said our family was poor, so you can imagine how my dad reacted when he heard she was pregnant. I was only 5 when I heard them shouting. Kids usually forget things when they're young, but I remember everything. I remember the story she told him about how it all happened. It's a bit vague, but as the saying goes, it was a silly mistake. She said she didn't want to get rid of the baby because she felt she was going to be special and change our lives. My dad couldn't believe what she said, and said he couldn't stay with her anymore. The first few days he came back home drunk and became violent, which made me cry every day. I don't know how 9 months came by so quickly, but I turned 6. The months just flew by, and I turned 6. My mom gave birth to Sophia, and my dad wasn't around much. He couldn't live with her carrying another child, so he stopped coming home. The one time he did come back was for a divorce. 2 months after Sophia was born, I remember my mom crying and reading a paper with the word divorce written on it. She signed it. I remember the paper, and I wondering what it was that made her cry. But eventually, as I grew up, I figured it out. Dad wasn't rich enough to file for custody. I never thought he wanted to, since it was like a burden of my choice. I remember him kissing me on my forehead and saying that he loved me. He was always going to be there for me. I don't know where he went, but the next day he came to pack his things when I was sleeping, or at least that's what my mom said. It was just my mom, Sophia, and me left in this small house. My mom struggled every day, but she was still my mom, and I loved her. My sister Sophia was there for me, too. My mom was able to send me to school until I finished. By the time I was 18, I'd also managed to get a job as a babysitter or dog walker, basically anything that could earn me money since I wanted to help my mom out with Sophia. She was an absolute angel. My mom was not completely right about her changing our lives, but I love my sister. I was able to save enough and get into Florida State University, but I was a time student because I was also working. This is where things were going to go wrong. But there's a reason I'm telling you the backstory of my life, because they are all connected. I was a people pleaser because I'd do anything to make people content with me so they'd give me extra tips when I was done. When I was apart, I was a time student and also working. I did extra work to earn money. I offered to do people's assignments and I'll get paid for it. That's how I met Alex. We weren't in the same major, but we were in the same year. He said he heard I did assignments and he gave me his assignments. That became a regular thing that happened a lot. It was so helpful for me because he paid lots of money. I asked a friend of mine, Sheila, about him. She told me that he came from a rich family and had lots of money. A year passed and this continued until he came to me for a personal reason. He wasn't a serious person with studies. He told me he hated reading. His grades were very low. He didn't care because he wanted to get school done. Then his father told him he had to get high grades or he wasn't going to get anything. Alex asked me to be his tutor, and I explained that his tutor my to-do list was to read a book for him. Then he told me he was a teacher. He said he wanted to be a writer. I said okay, but he didn't want to do that. He said he wanted to be a lawyer. He said it didn't suit him at all. After that, I said it did. He said it was too hard. And said he'd pay me a lot of money. It was a great opportunity and I didn't complain when I saw how much he was offering. I accepted the job immediately and said I'd tutor him at his house. I told him I wasn't comfortable with that idea and asked if we could study at the library instead. He agreed and we got to work almost immediately. I studied different majors but they were related so tutoring him wasn't too difficult. I was always a straight A student. My mom made sure to remind me of the importance of education right from early childhood and this played a huge part in my studies. I was always at the library trying to learn new things whenever I wasn't working and that contributed. I was surprised at how easy it was to tutor Alex. He was a quick learner and had a good memory. He was respectful and never tried anything inappropriate. We got along well and I noticed he was comfortable around me. We talked a lot about life and everything that had happened to us. It turned out Alex just never tried hard, which was why his grades were so low. We were getting closer by the day and Alex began to tell me more and more about himself until it felt like I knew him better than anyone else. I knew almost everything about him down to what he wanted to do and why he was currently putting in so much effort. He told me that he wanted to win. He wanted to do well on his own and show his dad that he didn't need his wealth. Alex, like a lot of other men his age, didn't have the best relationship with his father. He was pretty ambitious, far more ambitious than I thought, and I was beginning to love him for it. He told me that he wanted to start up a company, something huge. Together we started drawing out plans. Alex and I had everything covered. We had decided where the company would be.